All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for our Star Wars The Last Jedi
review.
Yes, and it's
been a long time coming.
It's been a long time coming. Yeah, we've put this one off in particular because
we want to do it justice.
We wanted to do it justice.
Yeah.
And this is a movie that we've heard varying opinions on
Yeah.
and varying kind of thoughts on, but we wanted to basically preface this by saying, guys, if this is the review that you're looking for some people who are going to rag on the movie and say it's the worst thing ever, you're in the wrong place.
But this is our basically coming to you and saying, hey, we actually, because we just rewatched it, and we think there's actually a lot to be had from this movie, and that most of the problems aren't as big as they seem.
Right. So there are some definite problems in the film, and it is not our favorite Star Wars movie ever. But we want to basically see if our kind of input on this whole thing gives you guys some
fresh perspective.
See things from a certain point of view, to quote an old venerated past Jedi
All
master.
right, you're playing that card.
Yeah. So with The Last Jedi, it did a lot of things well.
It did. It did indeed.
Now the movie as a whole, I would say, where does it rate in terms of Star Wars movies for you? I'd say it's like my fifth favorite.
I don't know. I would say it's better than all the prequels and Rogue One.
Okay.
So
yeah.
That's about where I would put it.
Okay.
It's actually very similar to Rogue One, but
I was actually going to say, guys, if you want to draw a comparison to this movie to some others, it has a lot of similarities in terms of manic kind of plot structure, the pacing being a little bit wonky,
but having a very high
impact moments, incredible third act, a lot of really powerful little mini kind of stories. But I would say this movie finally does something in particular that very few Star Wars movies at all up until this point have done.
Yep.
And this is why I want to say that people are giving The Last Jedi some undue treatment.
Yeah.
Because it does character arcs finally for almost everyone.
Even characters you didn't want to get them.
Yep. So let's go over the characters in particular. We have Kylo and Rey, which I want to say these two are the best parts of the movie.
Yes.
Like their character stories that go through this weave perfectly together. So their little Force bond that they develop,
fantastic.
It makes perfect sense lore-wise, and it also has some really cool implications for the future.
It does.
But they go on legitimate arcs from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie in such a way that we haven't actually seen ever in Star Wars from our antagonist and protagonist.
Yeah, it's really true. And if you look at what they did with that whole Force bond thing, that was a completely new concept for the movie-only people. For the extended universe people, it's like, oh my gosh, yes, finally. But that was a very new concept. And if you think about it, it's kind of a strange thing to introduce with the Force.
Right.
And they did it very quickly. Like, if you think about the movie as a whole, the Force bonds is in a very small portion of that. Like, they very quickly moved past
it's spread out across a lot of the film. But it's only in these small little moments.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I want to move on to the next hypest character to talk about, and that's Luke. Luke's character had, I'd say, the most controversy surrounding the film. But I think Jake and I will easily go on the record and say we loved Luke.
Yes.
We loved Luke in The
fantastic.
Last Jedi. So when you go back to the original trilogy and you see this kid, Luke, he really grows over the course of the films, like over from the beginning of the first film to the end of Return of the Jedi. But actually in the films themselves, his little growth they're mostly self-contained.
Right.
And they're very small. I would say his biggest change actually happens in The Empire Strikes Back, for sure.
Right. And then in between, like, say, Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, there's a noticeable shift
in his character.
But that they didn't actually show the growth for. They showed the start of it, but they didn't actually show it happen.
Right, but they also had his character in Return of the Jedi not really go on an arc because he had already essentially become who is someone who's worthy to be the Last Jedi, haha, in that regard.
Exactly.
But then we find out there is another, of course. So
Right.
in that regard, I feel like Luke in this is the reversal of what happened in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Because
Sure.
when he comes into this movie, we are introduced to him, and Rey's handing him the lightsaber, and he looks at it, and his hands tremble, and there's this moment of, whoa, there's some gravity in this moment, and he just chucks
Throws
the
it away.
lightsaber.
And I know I know a lot of people are really upset about that, and in a way kind of rightly so, because it's so different than what we were expecting that was set up from The Force Awakens. And The Force Awakens was a great Star Wars movie in the fact that it was like just good cheese, and it set the stage for what was to come after it. But then The Last Jedi, It took a few spins that we weren't anticipating. And I get that a lot of people are upset by that. But the act of Luke throwing away the lightsaber, that instantly communicates what's going on.
Right.
And instantly. And that's, if nothing else, that's impressive.
If anything, it's very bold, because what you're doing is saying, all right, all you super fans out there that, really invested in the in-between movie kind of stuff, theorizing on who Rey's parents are, theorizing on what Luke's been doing all this time, theorizing on things like Snoke, all that stuff, we're going to chuck that to the side, because we're going to be telling a story that branches off into new Star Wars stories. And I feel like that's where we need to appreciate The Last Jedi. So Luke, as a character, goes on an arc. I will tell you, I know a lot of people don't like what they did with his character, but this is the best portrayal of the fallen hero we've ever seen in Star Wars. We've almost never seen this archetype of a character in Star Wars before.
Because Star Wars, it does the sort of the classic stories really well, and it doesn't branch out from those too much. A New Hope was almost just never. The hero's journey thrown into a sci-fi fantasy universe, right?
Yep. It was a fairy tale.
Exactly. It was a fairy tale.
And it was a good one.
It was a very good one. Yeah. And a lot of the criticism that Star Wars has gotten in recent years, after the prequels is, okay, like The Force Awakens, well, why don't you do something different?
Why don't you add something to
exactly.
Yeah.
The Last Jedi is that. And even though it has its bumps, oh my gosh.
Right. If you can look at the movie of The Last Jedi and see where they're going with this, then I couldn't see you being really disappointed with The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
I understand why you could be disappointed, because you don't know where they're going with things after The Last Jedi.
Yes.
Because you're like, well, wait, what's left from here? Well, we're gonna talk about that.
And I would encourage you to go give it another watch, because when I watched it the second time, I was shocked at how much the things that bugged me so much the first time I watched it didn't really bug me as much anymore, because my expectations had been set. The surprises, the things that I wanted to happen that didn't, I wasn't bothered as much by that anymore, because I was looking more at the movie for what it was, what it decided to do.
Right. So one of the things that I would say The Last Jedi is at its core in terms of themes is the idea of failure. The main theme, I would say, of the movie is failure and moving forward in the midst of failure. So all these characters exemplify that. And we could go over every single character's arc in particular, but I think that's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So let's boil it down to the main three characters: Kylo, Rey, and Luke. Those are the three main characters. Everyone else is a side character in this. And I feel like that was actually a little bit of a sucker punch to those of us that, like me, we wanted Finn to be a main character.
Exactly,
again.
yeah.
And he's not.
Nope.
He's not. And I think that's what it's going to be moving forward, is that they're going to focus more and more on Kylo and Rey. And maybe in the ninth film, they'll have the arcs, the stories in particular, be with the characters working together this time. Because I would say that is one of the weak points of The Last Jedi, is the fact that the characters were all split up.
Exactly. And in fact, one of the best parts of The Last Jedi is what happens when two characters that were already established as main characters interact despite this insane distance in between them.
So we could go into the side characters, but I wanted to point out the new characters and why they were involved in the film, because I feel like they are They're a source of nitpicking, controversy, and potentially a negative bit to the film. The one negative thing I think that they truly represent is a detraction from the main characters.
Right, they're a distraction.
That's it. But that is it. Yeah. The main thing that they're there for is to communicate the message of the movie's second part of that failure theme, is the moving forward in the failure. Rose says it, we're supposed to save the things we love, not destroy the things we hate, which coincidentally is the opposite of what Kylo is all about. He is trying to talk to Rey about destroying the past. Kill it if you have to.
And that was even the thing that Luke had the issue with at that one little, for that split second, which is what caused, the whole mess. Right.
So moving forward, we now have all these characters together, finally. And I really think of this a lot like one of my favorite animated shows, Avatar: The Last Airbender, where after they've invaded the Fire Nation and they failed, they're now all together on the Millennium Falcon, essentially. And they're all off trying to figure out and recollect themselves and figure out what their next move is.
Sure.
But they have all these people. They have this entire world that could potentially be on their side moving forward. But it's now the open-ended question of, well, where do we go from here? And I don't want to talk about that. But The Last Jedi, the movie's story, I think, is probably where most of the negatives are genuinely going to be involved. And I would say it's mostly the pacing. Would you say that it's a combination of the pacing and the Canto Bight storyline?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily the. Thank you for saying that. I completely forgot what the name of that place was, but I would say it's the pacing and the fact that the expectations were subverted, and that most of the time when people go to Star Wars, they're not going there for some crazy twist.
Right. They're not going to have their expectations subverted.
Exactly.
They know the feel of what Star Wars is.
Right. And that's what they're going for. Therefore, and because they didn't get that, because Snoke died in this movie, Rey's parents were actually nobodies, things like that,
which is in our opinion a good thing.
We love those things, but because what they were expecting didn't happen, even though the execution in a lot of ways wasn't all that bad, with the exception of say the pacing, people it rubbed them the wrong way.
Right, and here's how I would describe it as something that's really interesting. If you go back and you watch the movie, I don't recommend to do it the exact same way Jacob's doing, because you don't need to change your expectations. Go in with a little bit of self-awareness and realize at what point did you, if you didn't like the movie at all, because we're probably not going to change your opinion or anything. We're not trying to. But go back and look and see what was the moment where it irrevocably shifted.
Where you decided this is a bad movie.
Right, exactly. Because my thought is that the reason why you did that was in a very specific moment, your expectations were subverted to the point of no return, and it pulled you out of the movie. And in our opinion, that's something that is understandable, but it literally couldn't happen for us, because whenever we go into a Star Wars movie, we're not going in with a lot of presuppositions about what this movie has to be. It's one of the few movies and one of the few stories where I don't try to get all of this extra stuff going into it. I do care about the lore, and I'm an EU fan. I read all the books that they've been giving out recently. I think it might be
because we're so into the EU and stuff that the Star Wars movies are not our sole source of Star Wars.
Exactly.
So if they don't do some things that we wanted them to do, that doesn't bug us as much.
Right.
But then when they do awesome things, we're like, yes, thank you so much. We've secretly been hoping that you would do something like that.
Right. So we're going to go through kind of the points really quick that we think are just the really powerful things of the movie, what it did well. So first bit, it changed expectations. Even though we saw a couple things that maybe shouldn't have been there, the general content was good.
Right, and even Canto Bight, for instance. They should not have gone to Canto Bight.
Right.
But what they actually did on Canto Bight, with, a few little exceptions, those little detail things, like the
nitpicks.
The nitpicks, but leaving those aside, that actually would have been really good if it was put in a different movie, if there was a better reason for them to be there, if it wasn't drawing your attention away from what the actual conflict was.
Right, and that's really the main negative we have to say about the film is just how it cut those parts with the rest of the movie, which we liked.
If it had been some sort of underground, like underworld thing, more similar to Rogue One, then something like that, where they're trying to infiltrate some casino and they go on some, galloping adventure, sure, go for
Why
it.
not? Yeah. All right, next bit, we have to give a shout out to Luke's lessons.
Yeah.
Those were fantastic. One of the things Jacob and I, we had a little bit of disagreement on, but we did honed in on this one bit, was the Force was truly magnificent and mysterious and beautiful again.
Absolutely.
And it was communicated so well in his first lesson with Rey.
We're still waiting on lesson number 3, by the way.
Yeah, did you guys notice that? There was no lesson number 3.
So...
What
is it?
What was it? And I think symbolically, Rey unintentionally went on the third lesson because the third lesson was resist the pull of the dark side, and she went to the. But we'll talk about that.
Or maybe the third lesson is find balance.
Find balance. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
But the thing is also, guys, a lot of people are like, "Where's Episode 9 gonna go?" Well, I'll tell you, Luke went. Become one with the Force, and he hasn't given lesson number 3 yet. And I'll bet you anything
he's gonna come back as a Force
Rey's
Ghost.
He's gonna come back as a Force Ghost, and Rey's gonna be like, "So what was lesson number 3 again?" He's like, "Oh,
about
right,
that,
about that,
yeah."
But
here's the other thing, though.
Be cool.
Lesson 1, when he talks about balance and the idea that the Jedi didn't own the Force and things
that
like
was
that.
lesson number 2. Well, no, you're right. That was lesson number 1.
That was lesson 1. Mm-hmm. But it seemed like. It felt like going back to Yoda's talk with Luke in Empire Strikes Back, but in my opinion, I actually liked this lesson more than Yoda's lesson to Luke. Because a lot of the things that Yoda was going over, they were really good, but they were a lot of things that I could have kind of just assumed if I took sort of the general good energy idea that the Force is. And maybe that's just me growing up around Star Wars, so it's,
It's ingrained into you.
Exactly, it's ingrained into me. But the stuff that Luke was bringing up, it was one of those things where because it was coming from a place of his brokenness, I'm like, okay, I'll need to take this with a grain of salt, right? Because it's going to be skewed, weighted one way or something like that. But they were actually really good.
It was really good. Yeah. And speaking of lessons, we have to talk about Yoda's talk with Luke.
We do.
And
we do.
He, in a way, is also another messenger of one of the themes of the film.
Yep.
In a way, almost
he literally says it.
He literally says it.
And it's so good.
And when Yoda basically brings up the point that Luke's kind of forgotten what his final message to Luke was back in Return of the Jedi was, pass on what you have learned. And one of the things that it kind of gets forgotten a little bit in Star Wars is that Luke failed his Jedi training.
That's
true. This is one of the things that people just casually gloss over. He absolutely 100% failed his Jedi training in The Empire Strikes Back.
Yep.
And that is important. That is so important because what it was in that moment he challenged Yoda's kind of classical Jedi teaching and said, no, I care about these people.
Yep.
And what we learned back in the prequels, was the connection is a bad thing, and Luke's like, no, I'm going to go with that and stuff. Maybe Yoda's bringing on this whole thing where he talks about, no, I need you to pass on your failures as well. That stuff as well, because that's the greatest teacher.
Yep.
He is reminding Luke that he shouldn't hold back any part of himself in his teaching because he's actually doing the disservice to her in the same way that he did the disservice to Kylo Ren.
Exactly. And it's something that the Jedi were doing previously. They were afraid of fear, basically.
Yep.
And that's unfortunate, but again, Luke addressed the whole hubris deal, which was fantastic.
At least he was aware of his own hubris.
Exactly.
But he didn't address the fact that his hubris was what led him to think that he should be afraid
exactly.
Kylo Ren's growing darkness.
Yeah.
That he can't control it.
Right.
It's the idea that he felt the burden of responsibility to be the one that rights the wrong that is coming about in
he was
Kylo
putting
Ren.
things on his shoulders that were not his to bear.
Exactly.
And I just want to bring up the whole idea of the lesson that Yoda gives to him, right? That is a lesson that we certainly haven't gotten really in any of the Star Wars movies, but I would say we don't get it in media much in general. A lot of times we don't even get it from people or like at all in life. And that, I would say, is one of the most important lessons people in general can learn, is that, yeah, mistakes are good. You need mistakes in order to learn, in order to grow. The fact that Yoda is bringing that up here, oh my gosh, thank you so much.
And to a lot of people, I would say that's a very common thing, but to many others, it's not. So
right, and the fact that they brought it up specifically for Luke, the person who, who thinks like, yeah, I get that other people, will make mistakes or whatever, but I don't. I'm Luke Skywalker.
I don't make mistakes.
Yeah.
Oh,
and the idea that, suddenly he makes a mistake and he shuts down, like...
It's great because he forgot that.
Exactly.
Okay, so going into the next bit, which is tied in really well here, Kylo and Rey, every moment they're on screen together,
it's fantastic.
It's incredible. In fact, even when it gets into the cheese, like when they're confronting Snoke, well, really, it's just Rey confronting Snoke.
Exactly, and Kylo's just sort of standing there.
And they're throwing back and forth their very Return of the Jedi dialogue at each other. There's moments where you can see what Kylo Ren is going through in there, and what she's kind of going through in there. And there's this little bit of a battle in there. We'll talk about Snoke in particular, but every moment building up to that,
it was fantastic.
It really sold us on these characters feeling alone, but finding like the fact that they were alone, but then up until this moment they're kind of using both their own fears, their own weaknesses in a way to try and help change the other person in some way.
Right. And
like Kylo Ren was projecting completely onto Rey.
Yes.
And Rey is completely enveloped in her own fears of inadequacy and all this, being disconnected from everything, potentially her parents and stuff. And so seeking that attachment potentially with Ren, it capitulated in one of the best, of course, showdown fights in Star Wars.
It really did. And even and just looking back on the interactions between them through their Force bond from like strictly a storytelling perspective, those are crisp, quick, to the point. They are emotionally charged. Like you don't really get much better than that in a movie. Like it's
because it's layered. It has a bunch of stuff in it. Even when it gets into the joke part about Kylo's shirt being off, it quickly goes like moves on and starts efficiently delving into where they're each at in their different places. Because what the story sets up is them being unique in that they are the sole remaining champions of the light and the dark, so to speak. But they are both extremely conflicted in specific areas and have their fears and reservations completely on display for people like masters like Luke and Luke and Snoke to either manipulate like Snoke or to address
because having conflict in a character is very good. You have two characters that have conflict together, it's fantastic. And the fact that they set it up in such a way so that they could have these meaningful conversations, then immediately drop them and then come back to them later is fantastic, because a lot of the times in order to have these kinds of meaningful conversations, you need to have build up to them. You need to have time in the story to say like, okay, these characters are not only in the same location, but they are at a place,
structurally it's almost impossible to pull this off in the story without some weird thing like this, but the way he set it up made so much sense in lore that Jacob and I were just like, wait a minute, like we were pulling from things like Luke and Leia's telepathy stuff, but also like some good EU stuff, some things from like the Clone Wars, some things from a whole bunch of other angles to where we're like, oh, this is good. This is an evolution of the Force. This is fantastic.
Exactly. And while the how we've said many, many times that powers do not mean, like, new powers does not mean better, whether you're talking about characters or world or whatever. But in this case, it was something that I would say was sorely needed, because when you think about the Force and how it felt in the original trilogy, it was mystical. It was fantastical. But Star Wars movies keep coming out, and you sort of start to think of the Force as, oh yeah, it's just the Force. It's the thing that
like Ray said, it's the thing that Jedi do.
Yeah, it's the thing that Jedi do. But this movie was like, no. We're gonna bring you back to that point of what the Force felt like originally,
right?
Where it was possibilities.
Yeah,
and I'm so glad they did that.
Yeah, and they have legitimate chemistry as far as acting goes as well.
Right, not just like the shipper chemistry.
Yeah. We mentioned the character arcs in particular that everyone goes on, but we really need to say that the only character I feel like who comes close to not going on an arc is Finn. But Finn actually does go on an arc because he realizes the burden of what, like, his responsibility is as someone who is a turncoat from the First Order to the Resistance.
Yeah.
That he actually has to he has to own that. He has to actually be willing to give up something for this.
Right.
And once he's aligned on his purpose, which is to destroy the First Order because of these horrible things they've done, which we get to see a little bit of the Canto Bight thing. It could have been set up better. But that's a little bit of his reasoning behind this, showing that he had never really seen the atrocities of the First Order outside of the destruction of the Republic, which had just happened recently. It wasn't personal for him yet. So I like that they tugged a little bit on that. But then Rose goes on her arc to being the shy, kind of watching the heroes go off and do their thing, to being actively involved and not really being great at doing the heroic stuff, but still giving it her all to where she will sacrifice herself to save the things that she loves and cares about.
Yeah, because there were, like, even the purple-haired lady, what was her name again? Holdo, yes. Mm-hmm. Even she went on an arc.
Yep.
Like, I would say the only person who didn't actually go on an arc at all would be Hux.
Yeah, but he's not even a character.
But he's not even a character, and even then they set him up on an arc with this whole thing of like, am I going to kill Kylo? Oh, okay, he's awake, I'm not going to. And the times he questions him later and stuff, like, they're going to do something with that in the 9th episode.
Right, and also to address the nitpick, we agree. Phasma should have been utilized better.
I'm still holding out for her to come back as a Mandalorian and just wipe the floor with people. It would be amazing.
Before you go and say, like, completely stupid theories, we both think that Phasma's alive, though.
Oh, yeah. Totes.
So, the people that thought Phasma was dead in Force Awakens...
You don't show someone's face that constantly has it hidden and then immediately have them just die by falling like that.
Yeah, but don't phrase it that way. We just think she's alive. Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
The actual twists in the movie were good.
Were really good.
And here's something weird. The plot twists that generally happen in Star Wars aren't really plot twists. Yeah. It's just the "I am your father" line.
Right, exactly.
I am your father. That is the plot twist. That is the quintessential plot twist of all plot twists. Nothing has ever really come out of Star Wars or really anything. I mean, there's maybe some games that have some pretty cool plot twists like that. But in this one, there's legitimate plot twists going back and forth.
Like, if anything, I would say one of the...
Yeah, we didn't expect. We didn't
expect. And I would say one of the biggest problems people have with the prequels, actually, aside from, like, the dialogue and, some of the acting and stuff, is the fact that there wasn't any mystery about it.
Because they're prequels.
They're prequels, right? Things went exactly as expected. You knew who Palpatine was. You knew who Darth Vader was. You knew all that stuff. You knew that all the Jedi were going to die.
Yep.
You knew everything, right?
It was more of the experience of... Will you enjoy watching how it goes to this point?
Right.
But in The Last Jedi...
They did something completely different. They're like, okay, here are the things you expect, and you know what? We're going to turn it on its head. Snoke, this awesomely, like, powerful, mysterious, dark figure, right? No, he's dead.
He's dead.
He is dead. Yep. Like, and if you go back and rewatch it, one of the things you'll notice is they take extra care to basically make sure that anytime Snoke is on the screen, he is absolutely commanding your attention.
Right.
Because they want to make sure he makes as big of an impact as possible, since he was just kind of a holographic voice in The Force Awakens, so that when he dies, you are just like, wait, what? It hits you. You're like, but how can he die? He's Snoke. What happens now?
Right.
Anything they want.
Anything they want. And this is actually the craziest thing that I've seen as being, like, some people saying this is a negative. The idea that Snoke dying is a bad thing is Oh my gosh, that is bogus. Because if you think about it, Star Wars has entirely put into our heads this idea that there's always this old evil lurking around the corner to corrupt the young ones. Yes.
Right.
No, that's gone. That's so gone. That is so old school. Like the classic kind of corrupted wizard kind of role.
Dark Lord. Something
Lord,
about the end of the world.
Exactly. Is a very tried and true dated trope. It works in specific ways, but if you want that, if you think this is the last dark hooded figure we're going to see in Star Wars, you're sadly mistaken.
There will be plenty more.
Because we can guess a little bit about what they're leading up with this, but I personally just see that aspect of it being removed as a perfect way to set up a more character-driven conclusion to this saga.
Because now the 9th episode is going to be chaotic, like in a good way. I'm thinking, because
Kylo's going to be unhinged.
If Kylo is commanding the First Order, how can that go?
He is a captain without a vision, and he has a massive amount of power and a massive fleet and army at his behest, and he can do whatever he wants with that. And from a storytelling perspective, I go, like imagine, J.J. Abrams is going to direct the 9th movie. Imagine how much fun he can have. With these characters now.
He'll have so much fun.
So that's the next thing we wanted to tie in. This has an insanely good setup for episode 9.
It really does.
Yeah.
It really does. One thing I forgot to say. If you go back and you watch Last Jedi again, those two twists, the Snoke dying and
Luke's portal...
Luke's
force projection.
Yeah, Luke's force projection. They put these little breadcrumb trails of like how Kylo gets the idea of turning the lightsaber. The little things of like Luke letting Leia know that he is a force projection. Things like that.
Oh, yeah. Like when Luke and her hold hands, she's like, wait, you're not here.
Yeah.
And then there's also the bit with the salt. And there's definitely some breadcrumbs to where if you were caught up, I would say, in the movie more, it would be hard to see. But I could see how a lot of people who might have been pulled out of the movie started looking at it more structurally and might have figured out some of the plot twists.
Sure.
But probably not.
If so, props to you.
Yeah, if so, props to you. But probably not all of them.
But yeah, set up for episode 9.
Set up for episode 9. We now have the entire Rebel Resistance group
basically toast
on the Millennium Falcon. And they're all basically done.
Yep. And the fact, because now we're going to have the First Order led by Kylo Ren, so the whole idea of the structure and the uniformity and the not well-oiled machine. Anyways.
Yeah.
But all of that stuff that we're used to seeing with the dark evil empires is going to go out the window because Kylo's at the head of it, and the only people that can oppose him is like Rey and the crew. Right, literally like a crew
for now, but they can go about the galaxy and make this let's gather up all the people that say no and stand defiantly against this petulant child who's still masked in a very metaphorical way.
Because they did like very much set that up at the end of The Last Jedi. The whole thing with the the little kid telekinetically grabbing the broom and looking up at the stars.
And for everyone that's saying like, oh, now they're going to put this is another group of Jedi. No, guys. Think about the symbolism here. Think about the symbolism here. This is so important for us to realize about how big the Star Wars universe is, but also how much a positive impact our heroes have on the galaxy.
Because they kind of address this of the world doesn't need, Luke Skywalker. They don't need some god with the Force to come in and save everything. They need the actions of everyday people to basically stand up and say, no, I'm going to fight for what I believe in. I'm going to defend what I love. And you are a bad guy and you need to go down.
Right. And it's not about destroying what we hate. It's about saving what we love. And I think that will be a big thing where when they do the next movie, they'll probably have a little bit of a time skip to move things ahead a little bit. But having all these characters now more realized in where they are, except for the Force users, is going to make it a much more driven storyline with regards to how Kylo and Rey ultimately come to a head. and really have an infinite number of possibilities for how the story could end. Because I feel like if Snoke and Luke had lived into this next movie, we would have known exactly how it was going to go.
And this is the issue with having characters like that are just so powerful.
Right.
It detracts from the sense of
choice.
Yeah, choice and proxy and
free will.
Free will that the main characters have, because Luke is not the main character anymore. His time is done.
Right.
If he was still around in episode 9 and he went all Force God, that would be kind of a problem.
Right.
So the fact that him and Snoke are both removed is fantastic, because
it gives a sense of agency and an actual agency to our main antagonist and protagonist.
Right, and the fact that now our protagonist will be going up against an antagonist that is a personal antagonist, not just some ambiguous dark entity, will make it so much better.
Also, it really makes things complicated with the potentially complicated redemption arc that people have wanted for Kylo Ren, because now it's not necessarily a thing of we'll redeem Kylo Ren to go kill Snoke together. It's a wait, if we redeem him, we just win.
Right, and okay,
can we actually do that? I don't know. But
this is one.
It seems like he didn't make his choice there when she offered. So what could be What could be different?
Right, and
we'll see.
And I love this because it means that if Kylo does end up getting redeemed, it is a messy redemption. It's not something where he gets to chuck the bad guy into a pit and then he dies. Right. Because a lot of
the
times
he has to live in his redemption.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the times, like that whole example with Darth Vader is probably one of the best ways to do it. But if you have someone who's truly done some awful things, right?
Like Vader,
or like Kylo. I mean, he hasn't killed animals yet, but but
younglings.
Or younglings. But there's this question of can they really be redeemed? Like take Zuko for instance, right?
Yeah.
Zuko, he was constantly chasing them, and he was opposed to them, but he hadn't actually done anything super terrible. Right? Whereas with Kylo, because he's so unhinged like he is now, if he does end up getting redeemed, it will be a lot more realistic, because you don't have clear-cut, easy things like that in real life. And I get this is fantasy, so, it's all about being unrealistic.
No, but I think
this will be something we probably haven't seen before.
This is the point about the movie. It's a character-driven story, so this feels more impactful, and it will be more impactful when it happens.
Yep.
So, if positive, we had it in there. Kylo killing Snoke, we're huge, big fans of it. But we're also fans of the fight that came exactly after that, because this movie has no actual lightsaber fights. It technically has one part where lightsabers clash, but that's in a flashback.
Right.
But other than that, there's no lightsaber on lightsaber anything. No, I'm right.
That's right. Okay,
move along.
Yeah.
The battle with the guards in particular was not a question of whether or not they would win. It was the question of, okay, afterwards,
what would happen? What happens now? This is where the unhinging starts to happen, not just with Kylo, but with the galaxy.
Yeah, exactly.
And
now we have the most powerful force put into this still a child, this
person
man-child,
that doesn't
basically
know what they want.
Yeah.
And also, this is the first time that we had a true group-on-group melee battle in Star Wars.
Yep.
And it was fantastic.
It was glorious.
We
Very
had
good
2 people on one side and 8 people on another side. And granted, it broke into Rey being over here and Kylo being over there for a lot of it.
Right.
But they still interacted with each other. The whole thing of, Rey throwing her lightsaber to Kylo and psh, that stuff we haven't really seen. And I was so glad we got it.
Yeah. It perfectly foreshadows at where things are going in the 9th episode.
Right.
But there's some really really awesome little moments in there as well. Okay, but moving on, we're going to jump back a little bit. Probably one of the best parts in the film, as far as a set piece goes, was the opening space battle.
Yep.
Now, Poe's wit and his goofy, interaction with Hux was a little bit different.
Yeah.
Was a little bit odd. I might have changed that up if they did that, or maybe have just shortened it. But as far as the space battle itself, Oh, it was fantastic.
That felt like it was actually Star Wars.
Right, which is something only really Rogue One and maybe the last battle in Return of the Jedi have truly captured, is the feeling of Star Wars when it comes to characters.
Yep.
And characters being involved in the Star Wars. In the prequels, no, there was maybe the beginning of Revenge of the Sith a little bit with that, but barely at all. It was mostly a bunch of faceless, droids and
faceless clones. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the fact that they did it this way, because that really is the distinction. It's that in this one they gave the people faces. They, even if they never named them, but they had them do things.
They had them do heroic bits that were special, and I think Rogue One, its main claim to fame is that final space battle, that final war battle on Scarif.
Yep.
In this, they summarize that a little bit to a specific set of characters. We had Poe and BB-8, and then we also had Rose's sister dropping the last bit of the bombs to destroy the Dreadnought.
Yep.
And they deal with the idea of failure right at the beginning of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Every scene that involves some characters in conflict has an element of failure to it. And we're not talking about the failure that goes nowhere into a dead end. It's failure that begets more conflict and more story.
Right.
It's the idea that in Star Wars, there's a lot of things that happen with very little consequence. And it's only when we got into things like Empire Strikes Back, which is why I think people liked it so much. People's actions had really big consequences.
Right.
Like, really big consequences.
Yeah, a lot of times, people, me included, will rag on Star Wars because the stormtroopers never hit, Like, no one ever really dies. Like, it's just, I can wave my lightsaber and I'm untouchable. And that's fine, for Jedi and stuff, it can be very fun. But the fact that they do this here where it's like, no, there are actual stakes involved. Even though we are not going to spend time to give that person a name and really make you know about them, we'll just do that little bit to make you feel something towards them.
Well, also specifically about the stakes of the rest of the film, which this space battle does set up perfectly, because the entire whole movie is one massive chase, actually. Like, the whole thing being one massive chase means that you have to set the stakes really well in the beginning, otherwise you won't care that much about the chase moving forward.
And while I personally think that they shouldn't have as much of it be a chase, and they should have spent more time on, like, say, Rey and Kylo and things like that, maybe spent more time on the planet.
Yeah.
Not the what's-it planet, but the salt planet. You know?
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on, dude. You're a Star Wars fan. Remember the names. That's how we claim it is for Star Wars fans. We have to remember the names and stuff.
I remember the names of EU things much better than things in the movies, actually.
Yeah, for sure. But also, this sets up Poe's actual arc as being a side character, instead of being a tertiary kind of badass one-dimensional character.
Because in The Force Awakens, even though he is the first character that we actually see, he's not really in the movie much at all. We don't really know much about him other than that he's a great pilot.
But he also doesn't really have any conflict beyond being captured for a little bit.
Exactly.
Like, he actually has no growth that his character goes on in The Force Awakens. He's just a hotshot pilot that is kind of like the ace of the Resistance.
Exactly.
With no real depth to him. And in this case, they actually give him some depth.
Exactly. And he had the rule of cool in The Force Awakens, right? Yeah. I love that part where he just goes over and just annihilates like a dozen TIE fighters, right? That shows that, yes, this guy is actually good. There are people that don't have the Force that are still
really good at what they do.
That are still really good at what they do.
But in this movie carries that.
It carried that. It made him an actual person. I love that they addressed the fact that being the hotshot that disobeys orders and stuff does not work in a military setting.
Yep.
Even though they had that whole thing of like, what was it that Holdo said? He's a hot shotter, or hothead or something like that. I like him. It's like, yeah, me too.
Well, right. Holdo, in a way, knew that she couldn't really give him, the knowledge of that because he might, actively disagree with this whole thing to the point of mutiny. The problem was she was in a Kobayashi Maru whatever way that would probably have led to some kind of mutiny, unless she could see the future and know that, wait, he actually might be level-headed enough to agree with this plan.
Right,
So,
and that might be another one of those like little nitpick plot details that could have been done. They could have done multiple things. They could have sent fighters out to planets to try and get code breakers or whatever while doing their original plan.
There's a whole lot of things that I think could have been changed about the overall space chase to where I think it's mostly nitpicking, but to where I would say that it's fair to say it doesn't add a whole lot of positive things to the film.
Because
it's the things that happen with the characters in those moments that make it better.
Yeah.
Whereas the actual story choices within that, they're kind of average, 5, 6 out of 10.
Yeah. Most of the problems with the space chase could have been solved if they simply had more main characters present. Since Poe was really the only main character, and he was just recently elevated as sort of that side character, main character status.
Right. So next bit before we go into the things that we would say didn't do well for The Last Jedi is Rey going into the dark side hole.
Right. So that was like one of our favorite parts in the movie.
Yeah.
Because like some people will say like it's just a redo of Luke going into the cave on Dagobah.
Yep. No.
It is so much more than that.
Because while structurally it does fit that.
Right. It does.
They had a little bit of a thing in there that reveals a little bit about Rey's identity, just like Luke had that little bit with Vader that revealed a little bit of his identity without realizing it. But it's funny, in both of those movies, both of them in the moment where they saw the vision,
they see themselves.
Yes, they saw themselves, that's true, but they didn't understand what that meant until later.
Yep.
Whereas Luke might not have figured it out in the movie where he sees it and makes the connection. We realize it by the end of The Empire Strikes Back. But in this one, you don't realize the reason by the end of The Last Jedi. And I think that's a good choice because you know what this could mean, guys? You know what this could mean? Rey is no one.
Exactly.
But that's a good thing.
Right. What if the whole thing like Rey's parents being nobody, what if that wasn't actually a dismissal, but it actually is the answer, and it is actually an insane answer?
Right. Because her being no one means that for some reason the Force chose her. Yeah. And this is something that I feel like people were theorizing a lot back when The Force Awakens came about. But Rey is someone important because the Force chose her.
Exactly. And
the Force didn't choose her because she was special.
Right. Exactly. And Snoke even specifically brought up, and since Snoke and Luke are kind of like the masters of the Force, so anything they say about the Force, you can pretty much take it as law, right? Yeah. And Snoke said, "I warned you that the champion of the light side would rise. Would rise, exactly.
As Kylo rose.
Yes. As Kylo rose, that whole balance thing. Mm-hmm. So if Rey is the champion of the light side, when was another time we had some sort of reference for there being some champion of the Force that would bring about balance?
I don't know. I think it was involved in these 3 movies that I'm supposed to forget. They start with a pre and end in quals.
Yeah, there was a Razzie Award thrown in there somewhere, I think. But,
but guys... Look out for episode 9. We're gonna have some galaxy-shattering implications for
if Rey is basically the reincarnation of the Chosen One. That's kind of a big deal. And also, here's another thing: the way they showed it. All right, she's staring at this mirror thing, right? She sees herself, and she's like, "What? I wanted to see my parents, right? I wanted to see where I came from." Well, okay, So, if there's always sort of a champion of the light to rise up against the champion of the darkness, that's kind of like a reincarnation, basically, especially if she is the sort of reincarnation of the Chosen One, aka Anakin and all that stuff. Then the fact that she is seeing multiple copies of herself going back, that is kind of a big deal.
Yep.
Just a bit.
Yeah. I will just say, Rey... They're kind of playing with the whole thing of, well, is Rey a Mary Sue? It's like, well, no, but if we go by this logic, then Luke was a Mary Sue. But we're not even going to go into that.
Mary Sue is used too often, I would say.
Too often. But I would say with Rey, one of the things that Luke also hinted at this was that the Jedi don't own the Force.
Right.
This is getting into the stuff of the older lore of the Force, where the Force has its own will. It has its own
beyond midichlorians.
Yes, we're talking about the big stuff. So that'll be huge if they capitalize on that in episode 9.
Yes.
But once again, that's more of a potential thing.
Right.
The only bit I would say that we need to talk about as being a big thing was just the final bit with Luke. It was just beautiful.
It was absolutely
it was gorgeous.
Yeah.
I want to say that it felt more impactful viewing it than really analyzing it.
Sure.
Because the experience
experience.
of the whole thing, from when he goes and visits Leia, when he walks into the base, and when he falls and relinquishes his body to the Force and becomes one with it, there's this feeling of us moving into a new era.
Yep. Well said.
And it felt empowering, because Luke, I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, this guy wussed out the last bit because he exhausted himself from breathing too hard.
No.
He chose this.
Yeah.
He chose this.
He finally found balance
Yes,
himself.
finally.
Because he's constantly talking about balance, right? But then Rey's like, I don't feel anything from you.
Right. Because he had cut himself off from the Force.
Because he had cut himself off from the Force. So, like, that means... So, the whole thing of Luke dying and all this stuff, it's not a bad thing. It's one of the best things they could possibly do, because at the very beginning they established that he's cut himself off from the Force, and now this is him opening himself up to it again, being one with the Force. And he could potentially come back in Episode 9 as a ghost.
We technically see him actually opening himself up to the Force again.
Yep.
And that's right before him and Rey have their little confrontation over what happened with Kylo. But it's kind of important to realize that was a big sacrifice for him. That was a big step in his journey of coming back to where he needed to be to help move Rey forward. Okay, so now let's get into the things The Last Jedi didn't do well.
Right.
The characters were split up.
And that's really, when you come down to it, like, they should not have done that. The execution of the individual sort of stories that were going on
were pretty good.
Were pretty good. Like, there were some bumps, but they were pretty good. But the problem is there were too many of them, and the ones that were there we didn't care about because there weren't any characters present that we were really rooted and grounded in.
Right, and it was more along the lines of the characters being utilized specifically for the plot, rather than this being a side plot that made sense for the character to be utilized in.
Yeah, it kind of made sense that if you had this setup of the space battle and all that stuff, that all of this stuff would end up happening.
Right.
But it's one of those strategy versus tactic things where, the way I see it, there was a lot of good execution, on each of the individual things separate, but they shouldn't have been in there. When the director, the writer came up with this idea, should have been like, okay, all right, some of the characters are separated, so I need to do something to bring them back together, or at the very least, not separate them further.
Right.
That was the real problem with Canto Bight. It wasn't that they went to a different planet. It's that now Finn and Poe and Leia
and the new character
Rose.
And
the new character are all separated, because even if you dismissed Rose, right? Even in the space battle, Leia's unconscious, so she's separated, right? And then Poe is, doing his own thing with some new character that we don't care about.
Right. While
Finn is off doing something with a new character that we don't care about, even though they all had great personality given to them when they were introduced. But
so once the characters had their moment where they came up with their plans and such, the story should have been crafted in such a way to keep them moving along the same lines together.
Right.
Because that was what made The Force Awakens really strong, despite it being a retread of a lot of areas.
Exactly.
Okay. Next thing we need to talk about is the new characters are not really the problem. It's the fact that they spent way too much time on those characters.
Right.
Even though the movie was so long, it took away from a lot of potential time to be used on storylines and characters that we were way more interested in.
Yep.
I love Poe. Poe's fine, but I didn't need him to become a main character.
Right.
Like a side character.
Right. I would have loved if they had still introduced Rose and Holdo, but if they had basically done it so that they're going alongside the heroes in doing whatever the changed story of The Last Jedi would have been.
And these are the things that they kind of didn't execute, that well, but we don't really have a proper alternative for it. But if you guys have any thoughts in the comments of how you would have handled the new characters kind of having the storylines end up splitting up, let us know in the comments, because I'd love to dialogue with some of you guys about that.
Yeah.
The final thing that it did badly was just the way it was edited and paced.
Yeah.
It was really tough, because
Right.
I want to say that this isn't a bad thing, like a horrible thing. It's just a misstep. This is a 2 hours and 35 minute Star Wars film.
You should be able to do plenty of stuff with that. You should not feel like you have to have a manic pace for that. Manic paces can be good, but that will change the perspective people have as they're watching it.
Right. And it also was really jarring when they would shift things in between Canto Bight and, Luke and Rey, or Kylo Ren and such.
And the Force Bond was a great workaround for that, for Rey and Kylo.
Right.
But it's a Band-Aid.
Right, but I do want to say that with regards to the editing, I am not talking about the editing with regards to the sound or the light design or the effects or any of those other post-production things. I am talking about specifically with how the storyline was edited and chopped up together.
Right. It could have just been a bit better.
It could have been a lot smoother. Yeah. Last thing is, we wanted to address some nitpicks that we've seen out there.
Yeah, because most of the problems people seem to have with The Last Jedi aren't actually because of it being a bad story, but because they just have a lot of nitpicks.
Yeah, and I think that's fine, because this shows all of you are passionate about Star Wars, and of course we are too, and we love to nitpick Star Wars as well.
Absolutely. Nitpicking is a way to show you care.
Exactly. It's not a negative thing, but it is something to where you need to have a lot of different perspectives on your nitpicks, so that you're not holding on to them too tightly.
Exactly.
Because even then, you're not then acknowledging that they're nitpicks. You then blow them up to be bigger than what they actually
exactly.
are.
Yeah. Yep,
our nitpicks that we love to bring up, but we wanted to kind of bring up here is we brought up the idea of the turbo lasers
arcing in space where there's no gravity.
Yeah, that's a nitpick.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty valid. It's what?
And the First Order not just using hyperspace to go in front of them so that suddenly they're in range.
Right. That was actually a thing that I'd say the nitpick of that is that they could have done that just like the Death Star could have hyperspaced in front of the Rebel base at Yavin 4.
Yep.
Guys, these are little plot holes that are going to make a great how it should have ended YouTube video.
Exactly.
But they don't
break the movie.
They do not break the movie.
And with the turbo lasers arcing in space, there are plenty of other things that just, don't really make sense, like the stormtroopers never being able to hit the broadside of a barn
in the original movies. Why are the stormtroopers such bad shots? It's like a joke. We just kind of accept it, right?
Exactly.
This one is just a new thing with that.
It'll just become a meme in, a couple of years.
Right. The next nitpick is probably the hyperspace solution for the ship ramming through the dreadnought, Snoke's ship.
Yeah, because I mean, let's face it, that shouldn't work. Okay, EU stuff about hyperspace aside, if they could do that, then why don't they just have a bunch of X-wings that they just pew, 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 pew.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. But rule of cool,
guys.
It was a beautiful shot. The sound for it all was fantastic. So why not?
Exactly. This is a legitimate nitpick that I think is only barely saved. It's just Hux in general.
Right.
Hux's character
was laughable.
Yeah. He was like bad comic relief to okay comic relief.
Right. Because in The Force Awakens, right? He's so overly serious all the time, right?
And he has this screaming Nazi Nuremberg speech that became like a meme in and of itself.
Right. But that wasn't necessarily bad because it was still them taking themselves seriously. Whereas in this one, Hux is like, keep firing. Let them know we're still here.
I'll take that in my chambers. Good. And then he just gets thrown around by every Force user on the dark side.
I thought the whole thing of Snoke showing up, I thought that was great.
Yeah, that's the part where it's at least somewhat funny.
Right, because it's funny and it also shows that Snoke is not someone to just take lightly. If he fails as epically as he did, there's going to be consequences.
But strangely enough, they set up a potential arc for Hux.
They did.
He is constantly thinking like, I gotta get these crazy Force users out of here, and he almost kills. Kylo. And they treat it as a comic relief bit. Because he quickly shuffles his hand back and is like, oh, no, I was not going to kill you, no.
I love that because it was so casual in the way he did it. Right. He's like, oh, I'm going to kill him. And then he wakes up and he's just like, okay.
No,
I wasn't doing anything.
No.
But
we'll see where that goes in episode 9.
But they did have Kylo throwing him around a lot, and he didn't really seem to like it very much.
Yep.
So,
We'll see. All right, Luke
throwing the lightsaber. Again, like we mentioned it. We kind of got ahead of ourselves and mentioned that earlier, but that instantly tells you what the conflict is for Luke's character and where he's at. So even if it was something unexpected,
he's been hiding.
He's been hiding. Why was he hiding in the first place? Like, that was kind of a mystery, you know?
Right.
And he had to have a good reason or a bad one.
Right. Snoke dying, we brought that up, but it was led up to perfectly.
It was led up to so well.
And it's the perfect subversion for a Star Wars film who has too often followed the formula of the old, decrepit guy corrupting the younger.
Just like there's usually some super space station that end up being blown up by some way smaller vehicle that should not be able to do damage to it, like they kind of poked fun at with the X-Wing going up against the Dreadnought at the very beginning.
Right. This one, I see as a nitpick that we never really got to be as a nitpick that we personally didn't like, but we got to address this one. Rey's parents, guys, they are no one. Regardless of whether or not Kylo Ren was lying, or whether or not
they still addressed it. They did not dismiss it.
Exactly, but it doesn't actually matter if what we're theorizing is true.
Exactly,
because nobody is an answer in and of itself.
Yeah. And then, so this is another one. Leia flying. Mm-hmm. First off, she's in space, so the fact that it looked so static makes sense because there's no wind to like ruffle her clothes or anything like that.
Yeah.
But also, it's a creative new thing that they're having people do with the Force that we haven't seen in a very long time. Luke and Leia doing telepathy in Empire.
That was new.
Yep. Right? But we went with it because it's like, sure, yeah, okay, awesome. Keep the Force mystical.
Right. The things about the Force that end up getting used, it's kind of like things like Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan's super speed Force part in Phantom Menace that we all forgot about. That could actually have that. I'd say that's a more legitimate nitpick because it could potentially break the film in some way.
Yep.
And I think it's brought up in some funny memes online.
Oh yeah.
But with Leia, this is something that's actually set up as making a whole lot of sense because one, she knew she was about to die.
Yep. Also, it's setting the stage for the idea that there can be people with the Force that are like godlike level power, which is a great way to basically say like, oh yeah, when Snoke comes up, you know that Rey can't do a thing against him.
Right.
Kylo wouldn't have been able to do a thing against him if he hadn't been able to outsmart it.
Right.
So
yeah.
I love it.
And if you still think it looks funny or you think it's disrespectful to Carrie Fisher, I don't really have anything to say about that. I didn't see it as those things. But, yeah. Oh, this one. Luke dying being just... It ruins the whole film.
No.
Oh, no.
It's just like Snoke dying. It sets up the 9th episode, and in addition for Luke, it's the climax of his character arc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's equally powerful when you realize that he's kind of accepting the consequences of his failure a little bit, but he's also moving forward with that.
Exactly. Yep.
And if you think that Luke is done in Star Wars, you've been smoking the wrong bush, my friend. Like,
you want to bite some death sticks?
Yeah. All right. This is a silly one that I've heard some people say, but they're like
bombs
falling in space. It's like
they probably
could have been ejected.
Yeah, they could have been ejected.
The slightest bit of push coming down.
Exactly. Right.
That's not a nitpick.
I mean, that would make sense that they would have that since they'd want to make sure that they go out in space because they could be upside down or whatever. You know.
And this one is the nitpick that we felt is really big for a lot of people.
Right.
Was
understandably so.
Luke's falling from grace / being tempted to kill Kylo, and that being some kind of bastardization of his character.
Right. Let's not forget that Luke tapped into the dark side when he fought Vader.
Yep.
And you can think of it as being I dipped my toe in and now I'm casting that aside, but that's generally not how people work. And because usually if someone struggles with something, there is still the potential for them to struggle with it later. And specifically with the Force, that makes it so it's this idea of the dark side of being an actual pull feels real because so far the conflict with the dark side that we've had in movies is Luke, right? And he seemed to just cast away his lightsaber pretty easily. And Anakin. And, people didn't really respond too well to that. They didn't buy the whole idea of him having actual real conflict. Obi-Wan, the other Jedi that we had the most time with, not once did he seem to be tempted with the dark side. So the fact that they're saying that no, Luke actually did have some trouble with it, that's great.
And also it makes a lot of sense because he's alone. There are no other Force users out there to be with him and protect him and stuff.
Right.
As far as we know, if he was interacting with other Force ghosts during the time, it was probably pretty sparingly because he didn't seem to be like, oh, of course Yoda's here. And it seemed like, whoa, Yoda, I haven't seen you in a long time.
Right.
And if you've got all this connection to the Force, all this power, and you think he's, never really had a struggle with the dark side, I think that's crazy. But also, I feel like the complexity of Force using characters gets amplified when you see them having an internal struggle.
Yep.
Some people saying that the execution of the struggle could have been better instead of showing the, his perspective, then the true perspective. That's okay. I totally get that. That's just a personal preference thing. But the actual saying that that's a bastardization of his character, I think you're forgetting that Luke is the Last Jedi. He feels the whole burden of the galaxy on him to do the best thing, the right thing, and then he does what he's been told by Yoda he should do, and he fails miserably. In that moment, he's saying he looked into Kylo Ren's mind, he could see the future and things like that. When he activated his lightsaber, he basically realized, oh my God, I just set in motion the whole future right there.
Right.
I did this. And this was me.
And there are some details in that moment that I would say are very important to really make it be sold as this is something that Luke could have done, as opposed to just something that they do for shock value of, oh, you didn't see the real story,
Yeah, exactly.
One, the fact that he looked into his mind first, right?
Yes.
He was going to confront him. He was not intending to, he did not go there to kill him, right?
Right. If anything, he just creeped by his bedside a little bit.
Right,
Right,
and just read his mind, right?
Yeah.
Two, it wasn't just that he saw that it was much darker than I could have imagined. It was that Snoke had already gotten to him.
Right.
If, imagine you're the Last Jedi, right? And you've got your star pupil, right? Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, I'm a little bit worried about them. You look into their mind and you're like, oh, this is really bad. And then you realize that some dark, malevolent entity has been telepathically training them.
Or at the very least manipulating them.
Or at the very least manipulating them.
You can't even see anything good anymore.
That could cause you to do something irrational in the moment. And third, he said it was for a moment of instinct. The idea that there's this connotation that he almost wasn't really thinking about what he's doing. He's just like, crap. And then he's like, oh,
right. And here's where
I should not have done that.
And here's where you could see actually the hubris of Luke being realistic.
Oh, yeah.
He is unstoppable. Luke, I imagine, post Return of the Jedi, really enjoyed the ability he had to help others. Anytime he ended up probably in an environment where he could help Leia and help Han, and help the
he could
rebels
be the solution
and
to whatever.
He could be the ultimate solution, and he probably helped solidify the New Republic and all that. And that's a fun story that will be told at some manner, whatever. Mm-hmm. But in this instance here, he sees, oh, the dark side. I'm supposed to destroy that,
right? Because I'm the only one who can.
I'm the only one that can do this.
And then it's like, oh, wait a minute, maybe, oh no.
And in that brief moment, I like that there's a familial connection, because it in a way it feels like a reiteration of what had come before with the Jedi failing Anakin. Now, it's a retelling that I think is better because it's more personal.
Yep, it is way more personal.
When we think back at the prequels and stuff, Anakin's character was all over the place. It wasn't done perfectly.
But they probably could have solved that completely if they said, hey, Mace Windu, Yoda, okay, one of us will train them. Since this guy's going to be trained anyway, and he's super powerful, and I know that's a very different thing that I was going to not going to be bringing up. Okay.
My thing was that they didn't bring specifically into it how Obi-Wan directly failed Anakin. Obi-Wan was the proxy by which Anakin was failed by the Jedi Order, yes.
Right. But Obi-Wan personally.
But Obi-Wan personally wasn't that. He took it upon himself, just as Anakin blamed him a little bit for it.
Yeah.
But in this moment, they hyper-condensed that into a few seconds on screen that, while it was kind of a gut-wrench, shocking thing to be like, oh no, don't... There's no way Luke would have gone through with it. But also, if you think about it, Luke's impulsiveness, his instinct in that regard, is something so internally consistent we've seen with his character in his younger years, to where, oh, my friends are in danger, abandon Jedi training. By the way, failed his Jedi training, so, he leaves, goes off to help them, ends up completely screwing everything up. Completely.
Yeah.
Barely getting away by just pure luck.
Right.
Then, of course, Vader, he ends up confronting him. He completely fails in that he taps into the dark side for a decent amount of time, chops off Vader's hand, and only then, when he realizes the connection of what he's done, does he throw away his lightsaber. And relinquish it.
Here's the other thing that I liked about that part. Because, like you said, when Luke tapped into the dark side before, he threw away his lightsaber. One of the things that I didn't like about at first when I saw that whole flashback is I was like, wait a minute, you're telling me that Kylo Ren beat Luke Skywalker in a fight? How did that happen? I mean, I get that Kylo Ren's a beast. They did a fantastic job of showing that in this movie and in the previous one, right?
Well, we've also never seen Jedi children potential. We don't know if there's a...
Exactly.
Right. We don't know how that works.
We don't exactly know how that works.
There's EU stuff, but that's not...
Exactly. But in the movies, we don't really know how that works. But the idea that he basically... He would have been so shaken at that point that I absolutely believe that Kylo could have just, collapsed the building and he's like, oh, okay, Luke must be dead or whatever. Right?
Right.
He could have gotten the jump on him there as opposed to, like, Luke, if you really wanted to kill Kylo.
And we also didn't see what kind of training Kylo had at that point.
That's true.
So we don't know to what level of strength he was at.
Right.
In fact, at this point, we might know that maybe at that point and onward, Snoke only taught him a little bit about how to channel the dark side.
Right.
And Snoke's told him multiple times that he hasn't even completed his training with Snoke.
That's true.
Which is another great kind of dark mirror to Luke that Kylo Ren is, in that he killed his master before he could complete his training. It's not very pragmatic when you think about it.
Nope.
But
not exactly.
This ninth movie is set up to be some pretty cool things. But hey, if there are any other nitpicks that we missed, let us know in the comments. We'll be in the comments chatting with you guys, talking about our thoughts, your guys' thoughts. We're not here to sway opinions or change minds and things like that. But we wanted to offer an alternative look on the whole thing.
Yeah, because I really liked this movie. I really liked it, and I hope that you guys can too, because I get the feeling that a lot of times people will focus on things that they don't necessarily need to, and if we can help you do a double take, if you're up for that, awesome.
Yeah, but in the end, that's really all it is, guys. The Last Jedi, it's not my favorite Star Wars movie. It's not my most hated one. People are going to be like, what's your order? And I'm like, it's somewhere in the middle.
But it is way above the prequels. There was no sand in this movie.
Guys, for those of you saying Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones was better than this,
you need to watch those again.
I feel like you need to watch those movies again. Like, it's okay to have your opinion, just as it's okay to have ours, and we're not going to say that your opinion is wrong and stuff.
No.
But we really feel like there's a lot of viewer bias in that this movie was seen recently.
Right.
Go back and rewatch all the Star Wars movies. Really appreciate the original trilogy and even those little moments in the prequels as well. And, The Force Awakens and Rogue One. Watch Star Wars. But that's what we'd encourage you in particular, is watch Star Wars a lot. Like, watch it. Really, digest it and stuff.
You'll get a lot of opportunities moving forward in the future.
Yeah, because we're not going to be losing Star Wars movies anytime soon.
Exactly. And so let's get the most out of it. There was a time when we weren't getting any Star Wars.
Also, we're not using that as a way to say that excuses anything that could be a bad Star Wars movie. Because I'm actually legitimately worried about the Han Solo film, guys. And I feel like if you're in the camp that's like, The Last Jedi is the last straw, I feel like you're not appreciating it for what it did do well, but you might be blowing up some of the things that it did wrongly, like too much. But let's be vigilant. like this because Disney does need to do better in a lot of areas.
They do, yeah.
And us giving that feedback is good. So regardless of whether or not your feedback is positive or negative, give feedback.
Exactly.
Because Disney responds when money, happens, things like
That's
this.
true.
So
Because,
we want them to make good Star Wars movies all for a very long time.
Yes.
Hopefully forever. That would be really awesome.
Exactly. Most of the things in The Last Jedi that people have trouble with could have been so easily avoided.
Yes.
Right?
So give your negative reviews and call those things out. But remember that this is a Star Wars movie. And this is a Star Wars movie that we're going to have to accept even if we, don't like it or not.
And there is a lot there to like.
There is a lot to like. So, yeah, that's the gist of it, guys. Thanks for sticking around. Chat with us in the comments. We're sure there's going to be tons of them. Yeah. Positive and negative, whatever. We'll be there with you to chat about this. Yeah. So we'll see you next time. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all next time.